The bustling streets of Accra hummed with life under the midday sun. Ivy, a college sophomore with dreams of becoming a teacher, had just finished her final exams and decided to get a checkup before heading back to her family in Kumasi. She hated hospitals, they reminded her too much of loss, but her mother insisted. Little did she know, her life was about to change forever. 2 days earlier, Finn, the charismatic CEO of Goldcrest Breweries, leaned back in his leather chair, his piercing blue eyes scanning the city skyline. Life had dealt him a cruel hand years ago when cancer nearly claimed his life. Determined to preserve his family legacy, he had left behind a sperm sample before his life-saving surgery. Now, recovered and thriving, Finn had a singular focus: starting a family. But his wife, Victoria, a celebrated supermodel, was less enthusiastic. "I'm not ready for this, Finn," Victoria said, her voice tinged with frustration. "I've worked too hard to build my career. A baby isn't part of my plan right now." "But, Victoria," Finn pleaded, "this isn't just about me. It's about us. About building a future together." She sighed, shaking her head. "I can't. Not now. Maybe not ever." The conversation ended with Victoria storming out, leaving Finn grappling with the weight of his dreams slipping away. Back at the bustling hospital in Accra, chaos erupted when 2 nurses collided, spilling patient files across the floor. In their haste to recover the papers, Ivy's file was accidentally switched with that of a surrogate mother scheduled for an artificial insemination procedure. Unaware of the mix-up, Ivy was escorted to the operating room. "This won't take long," the doctor assured her, misreading the situation entirely. Minutes later, Finn's sample was mistakenly inseminated into Ivy's uterus. Weeks passed, and Ivy began experiencing unusual symptoms. She dismissed them as stress, but when her best friend, Grace, noticed her constant nausea, she insisted Ivy visit a clinic. "Ivy, you're pregnant," the doctor announced, her tone a mix of surprise and concern. "What?" Ivy's voice trembled. "That's impossible. I've never been with anyone." As the reality sank in, Ivy's mind raced with questions. Who was the father? How could this have happened? Meanwhile, Finn received a call from the hospital confirming the surrogate mother's successful pregnancy. Elated, he shared the news with Victoria, who forced a smile but felt her grip on Finn slipping. Later that evening, she confided in her best friend, Danielle. "This baby will ruin everything. It's not even mine. How can I compete with that?" And in the vibrant streets of Ghana, under the watchful eyes of a community that loved deeply and forgave easily, a story of unexpected love and family began to unfold. A soft breeze swept through the streets as Ivy sat on her bed, staring at the results of the pregnancy test. 2 red lines stared back at her, confirming what the hospital had said earlier. She dropped the test, her hands trembling. "This can't be happening," she whispered. Her mind raced through every possibility, every mistake that could have led to this. She was still a virgin, how could she be pregnant? Her best friend, Danielle, said to her, "Ivy, you've been so quiet. What's going on?" Ivy hesitated but eventually handed over the test. Danielle's eyes widened. "Pregnant? Ivy, how is this even possible?" "I don't know, Danielle. The hospital said it's real. I thought it was a mistake, but," she gestured to the test. Danielle sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We'll figure this out. But for now, let's keep it between us. You need time to process this." Meanwhile, Finn stood on the balcony of his office at Goldcrest Breweries, staring blankly at the bustling streets below. The call from the hospital earlier that day had shattered him. The surrogate mother had lost the baby, and with it, his dreams of becoming a father. He clenched the railing, his knuckles white. "I've fought so hard for this," he muttered. Victoria walked into the office, her high heels clicking on the marble floor. "Finn, are you okay?" He turned to face her, his eyes red. "No, Victoria, I'm not okay. The surrogate lost the baby." Victoria hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I'm sorry, Finn. Maybe this is a sign. Maybe it's time to move on from this idea of having a child." His face hardened. "You don't understand. This isn't just an idea for me, it's my legacy, my family. Victoria sighed and left without another word, leaving Finn alone with his grief. That evening, Ivy tried to distract herself by agreeing to Danielle's request to photograph the Gold Crest Brewery's anniversary celebration. She wasn't in the mood, but she couldn't bear to sit at home with her thoughts. As she rode her scooter through the streets of Lagos, the brakes suddenly gave out. Her heart raced as she tried desperately to stop. No, 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 she screamed as she hurtled toward the venue's entrance. Out of nowhere, a man rushed forward, grabbing her off the scooter just in time. Ivy clung to him, her breath ragged. "Are you okay?" the man asked, his voice steady yet concerned. Ivy looked up and recognized him. You're the man from the rooftop yesterday." Finn blinked in surprise. "And you're the girl who nearly jumped." They stood there for a moment, both piecing together the strange coincidence. "I'm here as a photographer," Ivy said, embarrassed as she straightened her dress. "And I'm here because this is my company," Finn replied. Her eyes widened. "You're Finn Carter." Before he could respond, Danielle rushed over, her face pale. "Ivy, are you okay? What happened?" "I'm fine," Ivy reassured her, glancing nervously at Finn. "Let's just focus on the photos." As the night wore on, Ivy couldn't shake the feeling that Finn was watching her. And he couldn't help but feel a strange connection to her, though he couldn't place why. When the event ended, Finn approached her. "Ivy, right, can we talk for a moment?" She hesitated but nodded. "I don't know what's going on with you, but I feel like there's something I need to know," Finn said, his tone gentle yet probing. Ivy bit her lip, unsure if she could trust him. "I don't think now is the right time." "Then when?" Finn asked, his eyes searching hers. She shook her head, her heart pounding. "I'll let you know, maybe." As she walked away, Finn stood there, determined to uncover the truth. Something about Ivy felt undeniably important, he just didn't know why yet. Ivy felt humiliated as Gabriel's sharp words echoed in her mind while Danielle drove her home that night. She clenched her fists, replaying the events that led to his dismissal. She knew what she had seen: blood on the floor, the shattered vase, the muffled sound of the gunshot. It wasn't her imagination. "Don't let him get to you," Danielle said, glancing over. "That man is used to throwing his weight around because of his money." Ivy sighed. "He's more than arrogant, Danielle. He's dangerous, or at least the people around him are. I heard a gunshot. I saw blood. Someone tried to cover it up. Maybe you should go to the police," Danielle suggested cautiously. Ivy shook her head. "And tell them what?" "That I think someone was murdered at a billionaire's party, but I have no proof. They'd laugh me out of the station." Danielle stayed silent, unsure how to comfort her. The next day, Finn sat in his expansive Lagos office, reviewing reports from the party. His mind kept drifting to Ivy, her panicked expression, her desperate attempts to explain what she thought had happened. Could she have been telling the truth? He murmured to himself. Francisco, his best friend and business partner, hadn't shown up for work, which was unlike him. Finn frowned. Francisco was always reliable. He picked up his phone to call, but there was no answer. Victoria walked into the office, looking stunning in a tailored dress. "You look distracted, Finn. Something wrong?" "Francisco hasn't checked in," Finn said, his tone uneasy. Victoria shrugged. "Maybe he's taking a day off. Not everyone works as hard as you." Finn didn't respond. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. That evening, Ivy sat on her bed, scrolling through her camera to distract herself. The memory card from the party was still in the camera, and she decided to review the photos she'd taken. As she clicked through the images, she froze. One of the photos, taken near the warehouse, showed a blurry figure dragging what appeared to be a body. Her heart raced. "Danielle," she called. Danielle rushed in. "What is it?" Ivy turned the camera to her. "Look at this. I wasn't imagining things. Something really happened." Danielle stared at the image, her face pale. "Ivy, you need to be careful. If someone's willing to kill, they won't think twice about silencing witnesses." "What should I do?" Ivy asked, panic creeping into her voice. Danielle hesitated. "Maybe you should show this to Finn. If anyone can get to the bottom of this, it's him." Ivy scoffed. The same man who dismissed me as a liar. He won't care. But he has the power to do something, Danielle insisted. Reluctantly, Ivy decided to visit Finn's office the next day. When she arrived, the receptionist looked her up and down with suspicion but eventually let her in. Finn was seated behind his desk, his expression unreadable as she entered. "What are you doing here?" he asked coldly. Ivy placed her camera on the desk. "I think you should see this." He glanced at her, then at the camera. With a sigh, he clicked through the photos until he saw the one in question. His expression darkened. "Where did you take this?" he demanded. "Near the warehouse at your party," Ivy replied. Finn's jaw tightened. "You should have come to me sooner." "I did come to you," she shot back. "You didn't believe me." Finn ran a hand through his hair, guilt flickering in his eyes. "This isn't safe for you to handle. Leave it to me." "No," Ivy said firmly. "This involves me now, whether I like it or not." Finn stared at her, conflicted. For the first time, he saw her determination, not just fear, but a strength that surprised him. "Fine," he said finally. "But you stay out of sight while I handle this." Meanwhile, Rilo sat in his dimly lit study, pacing nervously. He had cleaned up the mess at the party, but the loose ends worried him. If anyone found out what had happened with Francisco, it would ruin everything. His son, Rogelio, walked in. "What's the plan, Dad?" "We keep quiet and stick to the story," Rilo said firmly. "No one can prove anything." But Rilo didn't know that Ivy's blurry photo was about to unravel his carefully constructed lies. As the tension between Ivy and Finn grew, so did their understanding of each other. Ivy began to see glimpses of the man beneath the ruthless exterior, and Finn started to respect Ivy's courage. But the danger loomed closer, and neither of them realized just how entangled their lives would become in the web of deceit, ambition, and betrayal surrounding Finn's empire. Ivy sat in Daniela's small office, her head buried in her hands. She could still hear the voices of her family from that morning, the anger, disbelief, and disappointment. The memory made her chest tighten. "They think I'm lying," Ivy said softly, her voice cracking. Daniela knelt beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Give them time. It's a lot to process. You're asking them to believe something that sounds impossible. But it's true," Ivy snapped, tears streaming down her face. "I've never been with anyone. How could I explain this when I don't even understand it myself?" Daniela sighed, unsure of how to console her. "Maybe it's not about convincing them right now. Maybe you just need to focus on yourself. Figure out what you want to do next." Ivy nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "Thanks for letting me stay here. I just need some time." Meanwhile, Finn sat alone in his study, staring at the family portrait on the wall. His parents had always drilled into him the importance of legacy. "The Carters built this company from the ground up," his father would say. "It's your job to ensure our name lives on." But now, that dream was slipping away. Victoria walked in, her expression as cold as ever. "Still sulking?" she asked, crossing her arms. Finn glared at her. "You call this sulking? I've lost my only chance at having a child, Victoria." Victoria rolled her eyes. "It wasn't a child, Finn. It was an embryo. You're acting like someone died." Her words cut deep, but Finn refused to respond. He looked away, the silence between them growing heavier. "You need to let this go," Victoria continued. "Focus on the company. On us." "Us?" Finn let out a bitter laugh. "You only care about your career and your image. You never wanted to be a mother, and you made that clear." Victoria scoffed. "Don't turn this around on me. You're the one obsessed with this idea of a perfect family. Maybe it's time to accept that not everything goes your way." She turned and left, leaving Finn alone with his thoughts. Later that night, Daniela returned to her office after her shift, carrying a bag of takeout. Ivy was curled up on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "Brought you dinner," Daniela said, setting the bag on the desk. "Thanks," Ivy replied, though her tone lacked enthusiasm. Daniela sat beside her, opening the food. "I've been thinking, maybe you should go back to that hospital. Demand answers. Someone there knows what happened to you." Ivy's eyes widened. You think they'll admit to anything? They already dismissed me once when I asked them to double-check my results. Then make them listen, Daniela urged. Take a lawyer, threaten to go to the press, do whatever it takes. Ivy hesitated. I don't know if I can face them again. What if it just makes everything worse? Or what if it gives you the answers you need? Daniela countered. The next day, Ivy mustered up her courage and returned to the hospital. She marched straight to the reception desk, her voice steady but firm. I need to speak to someone in charge. Now. The receptionist looked up, startled. Is there an issue, ma'am? Yes, Ivy said. And if I don't get answers, I'll make sure everyone in this city hears about it. Within minutes, she was led to a private office where the hospital director greeted her with a forced smile. How can we help you, Miss Ivy? You can start by explaining how I, a virgin, am pregnant, she said, her voice sharp. The director's smile faltered. There must be some misunderstanding. No, Ivy interrupted. There's no misunderstanding. Either you tell me the truth, or I'll take legal action. The director exchanged a nervous glance with another staff member. Please, give us some time to review your case. We'll contact you within the week. Ivy narrowed her eyes. You have 2 days. Elsewhere, Finn's unease grew as Francisco remained unreachable. He decided to visit his friend's home, only to find it empty. A neighbor mentioned seeing Francisco leave in a hurry a few nights ago, but no one had seen him since. Finn returned to his office, his mind racing. He thought of Ivy's blurry photo from the party and the look of fear in her eyes when she described hearing a gunshot. Could it be connected? He wondered aloud. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Finn called a private investigator. I need you to find Francisco. And discreetly. As Finn hung up the phone, he felt a strange pull toward Ivy. He didn't fully trust her yet, but something told him their paths were intertwined in ways neither of them could yet understand. And as the pieces of the puzzle slowly began to align, both Ivy and Finn were unaware of the dangers lurking closer with every step they took toward the truth. As the night deepened, Finn and Ivy sat silently in the company's quiet lounge. The chocolate Finn had offered melted in her hand as she stared at it, lost in thought. Finn, on the other hand, was wrestling with a storm of emotions, compassion for Ivy, a strange sense of familiarity with her situation, and a growing suspicion about the threads tying their lives together. The following morning, Ivy decided it was time to confront the hospital again. Encouraged by Finn's unexpected kindness and her own determination, she returned with Daniela in tow. This time, her demand for answers came with a lawyer's presence. The hospital director finally cracked under the pressure and confessed to the mix-up. Finn, meanwhile, received an urgent call from the private investigator he had hired. We've found Francisco, the investigator said, his voice tense. But, he's dead. The circumstances look suspicious. Finn felt a chill run through him. He thought back to Ivy's claim about the gunshot at the party. Could she have been right all along? Later that evening, Ivy stood outside Finn's office. She had to tell him the truth about what the hospital had revealed. Summoning her courage, she knocked. Come in, Finn called. As she entered, he looked up, surprised to see her. Ivy, what's wrong? I know who the father of my baby is, she said quietly. Finn froze. You do, she nodded, her voice trembling. It's you, Finn. The hospital admitted they used your sperm by mistake. Finn stared at her, his mind racing. The implications were staggering, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed. It was the investigator again. Finn, I think you're in danger, the investigator warned. Francisco was likely killed because he knew too much. Someone in your circle doesn't want the truth to come out. Finn hung up, his eyes narrowing. Ivy, I need you to stay here. It's not safe for you to leave. No arguments, Finn insisted. I'll protect you and the baby. The next few days were a whirlwind. Finn began digging into his company's records and discovered evidence of embezzlement tied to Victoria's family. He realized they had been plotting to take over his business for years. When Finn confronted Victoria, she feigned innocence, but her father, Rilo, wasn't as composed. Cornered, Rilo attempted to flee, only to be apprehended by authorities Finn had tipped off. Victoria, left without her father's support, tried to beg Finn for forgiveness. "We can fix this, Finn," she pleaded. "I made mistakes, but I love you." Finn's gaze was cold. "You don't love me. You love my money, my status. And I'm done with you." He filed for divorce the next day. As the dust settled, Finn and Ivy found themselves spending more time together. He supported her through the pregnancy, helping her reconcile with her family and even funding her return to college. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Finn's countryside estate, Ivy felt the baby kick for the first time. She gasped, grabbed Finn's hand and placed it on her belly. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her eyes lighting up. Finn smiled, a rare warmth in his expression. "I did. Our baby's strong." For the first time in months, Ivy felt a sense of peace. Despite everything, she wasn't alone anymore. Months later, Ivy gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Finn, now free from his toxic marriage and the shadows of his past, embraced fatherhood with open arms. As he held his son for the first time, he looked at Ivy and whispered, "Thank you for giving me this second chance." Ivy smiled, tears in her eyes. "We gave each other a second chance." Together, they built a life filled with love, healing, and hope, a life neither of them had expected, but both had come to cherish. And as the baby cooed in his father's arms, the shadows of their past finally faded, replaced by the promise of a brighter future. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this channel and share this story. Give it a big thumbs up by liking it. Thank you, and God bless you.